President Poroshenko, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Steve Patton. I'm the Associate Dean of Research in the Faculty of Arts. And on behalf of our Dean, Leslie Cormack, and the Faculty of Arts and the broader University of Alberta community, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this important event. I want to begin by acknowledging that we are located on Treaty 6 territory. This land is a traditional gathering place for diverse Indigenous peoples whose histories, languages, and cultures continue to influence the U-Alberta community and our approach to our core missions of teaching and research. I also want to thank the sponsors of this event, which include the Department of Political Science, the Kuhl Center for Ukrainian and Canadian Folklore Studies, who have sponsored the displays that you've seen in the hallway outside, and of course to the Canadian Institute for Ukrainian Studies. CIUS is a leading center for Ukrainian studies outside of Ukraine. Within Canada, it is regarded as the home of Ukrainian and Ukrainian-Canadian scholarship. Established in 1976, CIUS has helped to define Ukrainian studies, not only here in Canada and in North America, but also in Europe and even in Ukraine. The center's activities range from research and publishing to developing materials for Ukrainian language education, organizing conferences, lectures, and seminar series, and awarding graduate and undergraduate scholarships and research grants, sponsoring postdoctoral fellows, and organizing events like the one we're at today. The Faculty of Arts is proud to be home of CIUS, and we are pleased to co-host this event, and we welcome you all here this afternoon. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for coming today to take advantage of this rare opportunity to hear our guest lecturer, President Petro Poroshenko. Having served as the fifth president of independent Ukraine from May 2014 to May of this year, he is uniquely qualified to speak on the subject, Geopolitical Challenges for Ukraine and Ukrainians in the World. I would like now to recognize those who are accompanying Mr. Poroshenko on his visit to our university. Dr. Marina Poroshenko, the former First Lady of Ukraine. Mr. Konstantin Yeliseyev, Mr. Poroshenko's aide and chief of staff, who served as Ukraine's ambassador to France and then to the EU, representing Ukraine in the negotiations resulting in the signing of Ukraine's association agreement with the European Union. Mr. Sviatoslav Tsigolko, a journalist and former press secretary in the presidential administration. And Dr. Nadia Kostenko, consul and general with the General Consulate of Ukraine in Edmonton, formerly with the Ukrainian missions in Istanbul, Turkey, and Washington, D.C. I would further like to recognize a couple of the distinguished guests who have joined us today. Heather McPherson, Member of Federal Parliament for Edmonton-Strathcona. Some are here. Mr. Lorne Dach, MLA for Edmonton-McClung-Collingwood. Mr. Kerry Diot, MLMP for Edmonton-Griesbach. And Volodymyr Viatrovich, Deputy to Ukraine's Federal Parliament or Verkhovna Rada. Finally, we are also pleased to have in our midst as well Alexandra Khichi, National President of the Ukrainian Canadian Congress, and Oresia Boychuk, President of the Alberta Provincial Council of the Ukrainian Canadian Congress. I apologize if I miss anyone. Although our speaker is undoubtedly very familiar to many of those in attendance today, whether they closely follow developments in Ukraine or simply follow world affairs, I would like to share a few details concerning his biography and highlight some of his accomplishments. Petro Poroshenko was born in the small city of Bolhrad in Odessa Oblast, southwestern Ukraine, less than 10 kilometers from the border of what used to be the Moldavian Soviet Socialist Republic, and roughly 45 kilometers north of the Danube River, marking the Romanian frontier. He spent his childhood and youth in the city of Bender, Moldavia, where his father was a director of a machine building plant. A port city on the Dniester, known as Bandera in Ukrainian, it is famous in Ukrainian history for having been the site where in 1710 the newly elected hetman, Pilip Orlik, who succeeded Hetman Ivan Mazapa, signed a covenant with his officers of the Zaporozhian Cossacks. The Constitution of Bandera stipulated Ukraine's independence from Russia and Poland and recognized King Charles XII of Sweden as the protector of Ukraine. Bandera today is under the control of the Russian-backed breakaway Transnistrian Republic. After completing his compulsory military service, Mr. Poroshenko enrolled in the Department of International Relations and Law at Kyiv State University, graduating in 1989 with a degree in economics. While a student, he met and married his wife, Marina Perevendentsev, a student at the Bohomolets National Medical University, specializing in cardiology. Together, they have 4 children. In the wake of the demise of the Soviet Union, Mr. Poroshenko went into business with his father and some colleagues, establishing the Ukrinprovinvest, Ukrainian investment industry and investment company, which specialized in the confectionery and automotive industries, and later in agricultural processing. It is a successful confectionery business which has earned him the sobriquet, the Chocolate King of Ukraine. In 1998, Petro Poroshenko entered politics, winning a seat in the Verkhovna Rada. In 2000, he was named deputy head of the National Bank Council, and in 2001, he became the campaign chair of Viktor Yushchenko's Our Ukraine bloc. After the 2004 Orange Revolution, he was made secretary of Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council, and in 2006, he was elected again to Ukraine's parliament. 3 years later, he was appointed Minister of Foreign Affairs, and in 2012, he was made Minister of Economic Development and Trade. Following the tumultuous Revolution of Dignity, or Euromaidan, in 2013-2014, Mr. Poroshenko announced his candidacy for the presidency, which had been vacated by the flight to Russia of Viktor Yanukovych. In the extraordinary elections held in May 2014, he was chosen president in the first round of balloting. He assumed office at a time when Ukraine's fate hung in the balance, Crimea having been invaded and occupied by covert Russian forces and then annexed in an illegal and rigged referendum. Equally menacing was an insurrection in the Donbas region of southeastern Ukraine, which was incited, financed, and backed by the Kremlin. The ensuing war that broke out when Ukrainian troops moved to restore order saw Russian military personnel and proxies, trained, equipped, and directed by Russian commanders, seize parts of Luhansk and Donetsk Oblast and threatened to drive to Odessa in a bid to create a statelet called Novorossiya, or New Russia. At this perilous time, Mr. Poroshenko oversaw the remarkably swift rebuilding and modernization of Ukraine's armed forces, which had been left depleted, demoralized, poorly equipped, and ill-prepared to resist the onslaught of Russia's superior forces. At the same time, the irregular volunteer regiments that had rushed to Ukraine's defense at its critical hour were successfully integrated into the command structure of Ukraine's revitalized military. Notwithstanding the needless deaths of more than 13,000 combatants and civilians caught up in the fighting, Mr. Poroshenko's administration managed to not only to stem the onslaught, but to stabilize and to begin to revive Ukraine's economy, which now had to support a frozen conflict that sees Ukrainian soldiers killed and wounded on a weekly and often daily basis. In addition to dealing with the existential threat to Ukraine on the battlefield, Mr. Poroshenko had to diplomatically navigate Ukraine's course toward Europe and protect its fragile democracy in an increasingly challenging environment. On his watch, Ukraine signed the European Association Agreement, obtaining visa-free travel for Ukrainians in Europe, formalized a free trade agreement with Canada, and opened a Ukrainian consulate in Edmonton. Mr. Poroshenko further took steps to implement difficult and painful reforms that sought to address Ukraine's long-standing problem with corruption, a solution to which has eluded Ukrainian leaders for over a quarter century of Ukraine's independence. Although only partially successful, he has been praised by many Western observers as having done more to advance reforms in his term of office than had been accomplished in the preceding 25 years. But what might eventually be regarded by historians as a signal achievement is the role he played in negotiating recognition of by the Ecumenical Patriarchate for the Ukrainian Orthodox Church as an independent and autonomous church. This is widely and rightly viewed as marking a tectonic shift in Ukraine's geopolitical alignment in the spiritual and cultural sphere, and thus continues to be resisted by Moscow. It is an example of just why Mr. Poroshenko is eminently qualified to address the topic he has chosen to speak on today. Finally, although Mr. Poroshenko was defeated in the presidential elections held in May of this year, in July he was elected to Parliament as the chair of the European Solidarity Party. Prior to coming to Edmonton, he met with German Chancellor Angela Merkel in Paris and took part in the Halifax International Security and Defense Forum that ended yesterday. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Petro Poroshenko. Pane Poroshenko, pane prezident, prosim do slova.
Дорогі друзі, високодостойна громада, перш за все я хотів би привітати тих, хто прийшов сюди з українськими прапорами. Фантастично. Друге, я хотів би привітати всіх, хто прийшов у вишиванках. Вам фантастично це пасує. Велике дякую вам. Третє, я хотів би подякувати пану Ярославу і всьому колективу, викладацькому складу, студентам університету Альберти за цю унікальну можливість мати цю зустріч. І тим, хто бере участь зараз в цій зустрічі, навіть коли не вистачило стільців, ви стійко приготувалися стояти навколо. Я бачу ваш прапор, фантастично, правильно. І хочу подякувати Ярославу за таку блискучу презентацію. І я дійсно сьогодні дуже щасливий. Для мене це є абсолютно історична мить, бо я мріяв потрапити до Едмонтону вже більше 10 років. Це була моя обіцянка ще на позиції міністра закордонних справ. Велике дякую вам за таку гостинність. Now, with your permission, I switch to English. And dear colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, it's really my great honor to be here today. And my words of gratitude go first to the leadership of the University of Alberta and Canadian Institute for Ukrainian Studies. I see you do absolutely great job. From all of my heart, I want to thank you for this job. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Yaroslav. I'm absolutely grateful to all of you, to the whole Ukrainian community in Canada, for your sincere support of Ukraine, for your contribution. I know exactly how important was the role of the Canadian volunteer in the most difficult year for the modern history of Ukraine, year 2014. You were shoulder to shoulder with us. Your contribution for the volunteer aid, your pray for peace, your pray for prosperity in Ukraine was vital for Ukraine. And from the bottom of my heart, please believe me that I am truly today glad to be here in Canada. Yesterday, it was Halifax, and very inspiring and thoughtful international conference on security in the brilliant organization, very high level of the participants. And I was delighted with the chance to share my insight as regards the world we live and the fight we carry on. Dropping to Halifax, I couldn't stop myself from coming here in Edmonton. For long I have owed this visit, and so I now simply return my debt, including the visiting today of the new Consulate General in Edmonton. It seems to me we are promising to opening this Consulate General for 25 or 26 years since obtaining the independence of Ukraine. But it happens now. Nobody understands better than me how important it is for Ukraine, for Ukrainians, for Canada, and for the world. It was planned to be open as from early days of the independence. And I consider it as a bridge between Canada and Ukraine. Bridge that makes very special partnership we enjoy with Canada, and It cannot be imagined better cooperation with Canada than we have now. It is not only deep historical roots and family bonds that we share, but the same values and principles: democracy, freedom, rule of law. This is what Canadian Ukrainians want to see in Ukraine. This is what Ukrainians want to see in their country. Last week, on the 21st of November, Ukraine commemorated the events of the Revolution of Dignity. 6 years ago it's happened. Uprising Ukrainian patriots for democratic values, freedom, dignity, and European choice. Imagine, people go not for demanding rising up salary, lowering up taxes, rising up pension. They just want to be European, that's it. And I'm proud to be Ukrainian who can demonstrate these type of things to the whole world. And here I would like to ask you to join me in the minute of silence for all those who gave their lives for Ukraine, for Ukrainian soldiers, for Ukrainian volunteers, for Heavenly 100, for hundreds of thousands of dissidents, for fallen heroes of the World War, for millions of victims of Holodomor. They deserve our prayer and our memory. Thank you. And it is the duty of all the Ukrainians in Ukraine and abroad to ensure that the revolution will win and the independent, sovereign European Ukraine definitely will survive. Otherwise, I'm afraid Ukraine will cease to exist and millions of Ukrainian patriots will leave their land to look for the better future. We shall not allow that to happen. No more. Dear friends, we all think about lots of the challenges in a global security. In most cases, all of the present challenges have a common denominator, common origin, and even common author. We are challenged by many issues: terrorism or growing radicalism, xenophobia or migration, proliferation of weapons of the mass destruction, or climate change. But more than those challenges, we are challenging the autocratic leaders. They feel free to violate our fundamentals. They feel free to disrespect the international law. They feel free to challenge the human rights. They display complete disrespect to our demands and appeal for the peace. Many think that it is just a matter of time before things will get back to normal, to business as usual. Ukraine feels this at best literally upon our skin. I know from my being as a president of the country at war how hard it is to convince the outlet world about the why your problem is their problem too. Believe my word, countering Russian aggression is existential. This is the challenge not only for Ukraine. Definitely, this is the challenge for the whole free world. Why? Because it is in front of our eyes that the future world is being shaped. Will be either a Russian world of the alternative values, or it would be free world for the universal values. As a president for over 5 years, I have had different calls, including those who did defend need, please account Russian interest. Mr. Poroshenko, you should understand Russian interest, and you should meet Russian interest. No, never ever. For 300 years, my country was pushed to meet Russian interest, and we know the results. And 5 years, in the most difficult time of our history, we learn how to breathe the air of freedom. And we never, ever give up. It looks that the opinion of understanding Russia is gaining in force, unfortunately. And my position, as I told you, was always being clear. First, we need, when they said, first to understand the Russian world is following example. Just compare standard of living in former Königsberg lifestyle and Munich. Or Karelian territory annexed by Russia 18 years ago with the Finnish Karelia. Or Kuril Island grasped by Moscow after the Second World War. It is shocking difference between Russian world and the free world. It's enough just to look in Abkhazia. It's enough just to look in Ossetia. I several years go to school in Transnistria. And for me, it's more than enough just to compare what's going on. And this is the best example of the Russian world. And we'll see about the real humanitarian catastrophe in the occupied Donbass with the commandant tower, with the hundreds of people in prison, with the limits of the human rights, with the absence of the education for the children, with the absence of the medical care for the elderly people, with a complete and full humanitarian disaster. More than enough. And I don't want that Ukraine to become part of the such Russian world. Russia has not come to Crimea to protect rights and freedom. They are violated in Russia itself, throughout the whole Russia. Neither Russia was interested in Donbass. Definitely, Russia don't need Donbass. This area has come under the military assault of Kremlin to weaken and destabilize the whole Ukraine. This is the only purpose of Putin and Russia. It invaded to our land to take the whole Ukraine, but even this, not the ultimate goal. Its goal resides in revenge for the greatest catastrophe of the 20th century. This is what Putin said. Greatest catastrophe of the 20th century is not the nuclear bombardment of Hiroshima, is not the World War I or World War II. Greatest catastrophe, as Putin confessed, is a collapse of the Soviet Union. Do you know the second greatest catastrophe for Putin? Autocephaly for the Ukrainian church. And the project for the Soviet Union is not possible to renew the former Soviet Union under the Putin leadership. It is impossible without Ukraine. Very simple. And it is exactly this goal of Russia that strikes back at us, at Ukraine, and at West. Seems that 5 years were not enough to make Russian revanchism irreversible. And distinguished audience, I'm here today in another capacity. Not only as a fifth president of Ukraine, but also as a leader of the European Solidarity Party. And I am proud that the latest election in Ukraine were greatly free and fair. And this is the first example of the civilized, liberal transfer of power, which Ukraine never knows. And I am high standard of democracy, proud, that shall be preserved. It will fight for that. And by the way, I want to thank Edmonton, who voted for me. This is extremely... This is confidential. That is what makes us different from the absolute majority of post-war space. This is what makes European democracy. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for all of this. Despite losing the election, I am not going to leave the political sense of Ukraine, because we should protect our achievement for the last 5 years. We should keep track to membership of the Ukraine, to the European Union, and to NATO. My battle is not over. Not for the high political posts. Battle for Ukraine, for its prosperous future, for independent, sovereign, territorially integral, and European Ukraine. And I am happy that I am strengthening in this battle by my political team, European Solidarity. As I name it, the Special Task Force in Ukrainian Parliament. And this is not because we have General Mikhailo Zabrodsky, the commander of Ukrainian assault forces, special purpose, but because every single member of my team, including Volodymyr Vyatrovich, once again, please welcome him with the applause. Last 4 days, he was our representative in Edmonton. He works hard here. And I hope in the next parliamentary sessions, or next parliamentary week, starting from the beginning of December, he would take an oath as a member of parliament. They afraid him. They don't allow them to take an oath on the previous week. The same way like they afraid everybody of us, because we fight for Ukraine. We believe in Ukrainian future, and we have your support. It is very important for us. I have no other choice but keep fighting, not to let revenge happen. And I keep believing in Ukrainian victory. Not my victory, but Ukrainian victory, victory of Ukrainian people, both on the track of reform and on the track of countering Russian aggression. And I would like to inspire you to do the same. Dear compatriots, we shall stand together for Ukraine to counter existing and emerging challenges. We shall not allow the world to forget about the aggression, to breach of international law, occupation, thousands of deaths. This is the strategy of Mr. Putin, to switch attention by fake news, by instrument of the hybrid war. We should be careful and experienced. I was countering Putin's Russia through the last 5 years. They do not look for peace with Ukraine. They look for Ukraine's surrender, for Ukraine's return to the Russian orbit of influence, to the prisons of nation, to USSR, second edition. And we are 2 weeks away from the Normandy summit in Paris, which taking place on the 9th of December. And the expectations are extremely high. I really wish President Zelensky to stand firm on Ukraine's interest and vision for peace through the victory, but not through the capitulation. Peace on Ukraine's terms. What do I mean here? First, there must be no undermining of Ukrainian unity. No any attempt of Ukrainian federalization. Ukraine should be a united country. Next, security must go first. Sustainable ceasefire, as it exactly mentioned in Minsk agreement. Withdrawal of Russian troops, as it mentioned in Minsk agreement. Withdrawal of heavy artillery and weapons, as it mentioned in Minsk agreement. Disarmament of all illegal armed formation, as it mentioned in Minsk agreement. And that would be extremely important, immediate control by the UN-led peacekeepers and control part of Ukrainian-Russian border. Not allow Russia to penetrate to the occupied territory. Third, election in the certain region of Donbass must be fully in line with the OSCE standard and principle, not under Russian battles of gun, which Putin tried to organize now in Paris meeting. We should avoid Putin traps and stay united. We shall strengthen pro-Ukrainian international coalition, where Canada as a G7 member play one of the most active role. During whole years of my presidency, I feel strong shoulder of my and Ukraine partner, Canada, here in Edmonton. I want to thank all of you for that. That was extremely important for me. I greatly deplored the state of play in our relation with US. Even in my most dark nightmare, I'm talking now from all of my heart, I could not imagine our ties with Washington to settle with just one issue, Ukraine Gate. Come on, what we are doing. Present Ukraine's authority have to do their utmost to restore relation of trust and strategic partnership between Ukraine and US, and to secure bipartisan support of United States for Ukraine. One shall not divide neither between Republican or Democrats, nor between Ukraine and US. American presidential struggle is for Americans. Ukraine had nothing to do with that. But Ukraine struggle with Russia aggression is for the entire free world. By the way, for Canada either. If there is somebody who is interested in Ukraine Gate in US, the one sit definitely not in Washington and not in Kiev. And everybody in the world knows exactly where this person sits. In Kremlin. We shouldn't get to the Russian trap. We shall not make him happy. We shall unite and defeat our common enemy. Why? Because Russian propaganda will do its utmost to deepen the gap and to divide American support of Ukraine between different political camps. During 5 years of my presidency, I enjoy bipartisan support. We should keep it as the most important value for Ukrainians and for the whole world. By the way, for Americans too. Don't allow to play this card. That would be even worse because sanction would come next. And this is the Putin scenario to avoid sanction. Said, okay, we already do everything in the Paris summit. With American, we present scenario of Ukraine Gate. What you want more from Russia? Leave the sanction for us. And we should ensure that the sanctions against Russia are secured and strengthened until sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine would be restored, and fully restored also the territorial integrity in Crimea. Not forget about Crimea. And exactly like this, it was in a statement of the European People's Party who were done a few days ago in Zagreb with my participation. The leading, the most important, the most influential political party in the European Union. We shall contribute to the strengthening of the new Ukrainian army, modern, efficient, tailor-made. Since year 2014, we have managed to build an army from the scratch. Now, Ukraine army is among top 10 of European armies, strong, effective, battle-hardened, experienced, fashioned. We managed to do it with the support of our international partners, including Canada. Today, I had the pleasure to meet with the Premier of Alberta, Mr. Jason Kenney. When I was a president in the year 2015, Jason was a Minister of Defense. And now I can say that when I was refused to obtain, don't tell anybody, the satellite images in the real time, which helped me to protect my soldiers, it was Jason who gave it to me. And when we have absolute difficulties, when we have a uniform, winter uniform for my troops, it was Canadian government who sent several planes to Ukraine, who helped us to fight for Ukraine during the winter time. And you know that he is, together with my team, the founder of Unifier. It was so touching that Canadian soldiers and instructors come to Ukraine to learn how we beat Russian from us and to teach us how to effectively organize defense of Ukraine. That was Unifier military training program for Ukrainian armed forces. And can you imagine, since it launched in April year 2015, Canadian armed forces trained about 15,000 Ukrainian soldiers, which significantly rising up their level of effectiveness. And even now, 200 Canadian instructor soldiers are in Yavoriv, in Ukraine. Do you know from where in Canada? From Alberta. I saw a list of the name of these soldiers. More than 20% of them are Ukrainian family name. Bravo. More than 15% speaks fluently Ukrainian. Bravo. And this is the relationship between real partners, which we don't have even in the year 2014. Relation of trust, relation of joint purposes. And I want to thank Canada, Alberta, and Edmonton for every single instructor we have today in Yavoriv. Canada is one of the key partners of Ukraine in getting defensive weapons in counter second army in the world, Russian, including the effective anti-sniper complex. When we receive American Javelin, even we don't have it in the touch line. Russian tank driver said, no, they have a Javelin, we don't go there anymore. Now when we receive Canadian anti-sniper complex, Russian sniper said, no, not anymore. Your satellite images, your training, your anti-sniper complex, our cooperation, saving lots of Ukrainian lives. Please remember that. And now, some in Ukraine suggest to conclude in a kind of new security agreement because of failure of the Budapest Memorandum in year 1994 security guarantee after we gave up our Ukraine third biggest in the world nuclear arsenal. My answer is clear. Don't believe in this project. There does not exist better security guarantee, better security agreement for Ukraine to guarantee our sovereignty, territorial integrity. No Budapest, no Bucharest, no Almaty, no any other security agreement. One, named Washington Treaty. Treaty which established NATO. For 70 years of existing NATO organization, no one member state was object of the aggression, was object of the attack. Don't find any other better opportunity. And this is position of my political party. Remains key, if not single promoter of NATO accession, not by words, but by deeds. And we appreciate that Canada and Ukrainian abroad are the strongest supporter of Ukraine's NATO membership. We shall not let new Ukrainian administration to trade in NATO perspective for illusionary security guarantee from Putin. Can you imagine? They want to replace NATO membership by security guarantee of Putin. It's not worth the paper they are printed in. Apart from the struggle with ongoing Russian aggression, Ukraine desperately needs the continuation of the comprehensive reform of political, economic, financial, social, legal, judicial, and many other spheres. And I appreciate that Canada is one of the leading contributors to the implementation of Ukraine's reform agenda. The greatest example is a recent reform conference in Toronto. And I'm proud that over 5 years of my presidency in Ukraine, as Jars said, it was done more reform, confirmed by International Financial Organization, than for the quarter of the century before. Not only in the security and defense sector. Rating of doing business of the World Bank, when I was elected as the president of Ukraine in the year 2013, Ukraine was on 153rd place. When I finished my presidential term, it was on the 64th place. And this is the biggest progress any country demonstrate ever. They said to me, war is not the... They said to me, war is not the best time for the reform. My answer was, if we do not make a reform, we cannot save the country. It is more than 2 years Canada and Ukraine signed up free trade agreement. Canadian-Ukrainian free trade agreement is now in force. 25 years before, nobody do that. An agreement opened a new page of the trade and investment relation between our countries. It gave impetus to the new projects, new connection, new prospects for the entrepreneurs of both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. And it is amazing how fast the trade flow is rising. For 2 years of CUFTA existence, Ukrainian export to Canada grew up by how many? 10, 15, 20, 75% for 2 years. This is real figures of the efficiency of our cooperation. The total amount of the investment from Canada to Ukrainian economy is $52.3 million. In this term, I would like to underline that the biggest amount of Canadian investment goes to industry, to manufacturing, and to my mind, it is one of the best ways to support our country, to give us a possibility together with you to renew our production potential and become stronger economically. And I believe that the Ukrainian abroad could be the most efficient promoters of Ukraine's investment and business potential, in particular here in Canada, in Alberta. With a view of facilitating better engagement of Ukraine abroad and Ukrainian citizens, I think it is important and useful to push forward the initiative of gradual visa liberalization between Canada and Ukraine. Governmental official is not happy all the time with that. But look, we have a visa-free with the European Union and don't have a visa-free with Canada. Is it fair? Definitely not. By the way, we should think about dual citizenship for Canadian citizens and Ukraine. I know this topic for visa liberalization is very sensitive in Canada, but I do not believe that it is impossible to find the window of opportunity for more liberalization of movement. And at the end of the day, I was also told multiple times that the visa-free regime with the EU also not possible. Believe me, when I was elected as a president, they said, don't even think about that. I said, okay, let it be a roadmap. Put it what kind of reform Ukraine should do. I promise you, we do not bring you any headache. First it was 80, then 97, then 121. When it started to be 144, I said, stop. We do 144 reform, you do visa-free. And I was proud. that as a birthday gift for my father, in 11th of June, this is day of birthday of my father, year 2017, I open symbolic door in CHOP. And from that side stand then President of Slovakia, Andrej Kiška. And we said, we're launching visa-free regime with Ukraine. That was something. Dear friends, as I mentioned at the beginning of my speech, today we had a very productive discussion with the leadership of the University of Alberta. Thank you very much indeed for that. And I would like to take this opportunity to inform you that I have proposed to establish the program to find out with Yaroslav, the program of support Ukrainian studies and learning Ukrainian language in the University of Alberta. I think it's extremely good question. If we're protecting the Ukrainian language in Ukraine, we should promote Ukrainian language abroad. And if we want to promote Ukrainian language abroad, does it exist better place in the world than Alberta and Edmonton? Especially when I'm listening that we have a Ukrainian teacher, but not enough. Great, you do a great job. And I strongly believe that this initiative will be very important to promote Ukrainian culture, Ukrainian language, history in Alberta, and the whole Canada. And therefore, a clear win-win of both nations. I hope that you in the audience also support this initiative. Thank you. Especially I see happiness on the first row. One more, but no less important an issue. Please help defend Ukraine spiritually. This is another battlefield and geopolitical challenge for Ukraine and Ukrainians in the world. Who knows, maybe this challenge is even more fundamental than anything else in our fight with Russian revanchism. One of the most important issues, which must unite today all the Ukrainians around the globe, is establishment and strengthening the Orthodox Church of Ukraine. You can tell me, listen, the state and the church are separated. Yes, you are right, I will say. You can tell me, listen, but I am the Protestant or Greco-Catholic or Roman Catholic. Why should I care about Orthodox Church of Ukraine? I will tell you, please, stay reassured. I don't definitely ask you to convent. I ask you just to support and strengthen one of the pillars of Ukrainian statehood, of Ukrainian sovereignty, national building, and believe me, even national security. And the decision of the Constantinople Patriarch Bartolomeo to grant Thomas or Autocephaly to the Orthodox Church of Ukraine has been much more than restoration of the historic truth and justice. It is about praying for independent Ukraine, praying about peace in Ukraine, praying about fallen Ukrainian heroes, and not praying for Ruski Mir, not praying for Kirill, not praying for Putin. Very simple. The very existence of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine is a huge blow against Russia's centrism of global orthodoxy, against Russian expansionism. And that's why newly born Autocephalous Church is under attack of Russian security services and Kremlin propaganda in Ukraine and beyond. Millions and millions of dollars are being spent to block the recognition of the Orthodox Church in Ukraine, to block transition of the local Ukrainian communities from Russian church to Ukrainian one. Declaring to be the follower of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine in occupied Crimea or Donbass is the same as to invite death or repression to your home. Therefore, it is sacred duty for all Ukrainians to stand in a defense of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine. This is vital for existing Ukrainian nation. For diaspora, it is great importance to encourage the international recognition of the Church. We have already gained the 3 major diplomatic victories of our Church in Constantinople, in Alexandria and in Athens. Bravo. 5, 4, even 3 years ago, nobody believed it. This is possible. This is we do together. And the Patriarch Exarch, Patriarch Bartholomew Exarch, from Edmonton, together with my team, do very important job. Bravo, and thank you to all of you. And 3 among 4 teens, Orthodox Patriarch recognized an independent Ukrainian church and battle for Ukrainian church and for Ukrainian soul continues. Dear friends, the future of the free world is being decided in Ukraine. It is decided by Ukrainians in Ukraine and abroad. We are all united. We should stay united. Don't allow anybody to divide us. We united in efforts to build stronger Ukraine in the united Europe, in the free world. We should be in NATO with your assistance. We definitely and desperately need membership action plan. We should be in European Union with your support. We should be member of the free world. I want to thank you for your attention. I want to excuse me for such a long speech, but this is a lecture. Now we go and switch to the Q&A session. I thank you for your attention. І glory to Ukraine, і слава Україні!
I should mention that this event, of course, is jointly sponsored with our Department of Political Science at the University of Alberta, with the Faculty of Arts, with the cool Ukrainian Folklore Center as well, partners with us in many of our endeavors at the Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies. I should tell you that a bunch of our key people, our researchers, visiting scholars from Ukraine, staff people, aren't here today because they are attending the Association of Slavic, East European, and Eurasian Studies Conference in San Francisco. This is a very big conference, and over the last few years it's been interesting to see how the number of Ukrainian speakers, the number of Ukrainian sessions has grown and grown and grown as Ukraine has moved to the center of attention. It is an arena, it is an academic arena, and like any arena there are contests, and it's where institutes like ours and the Harvard Ukrainian Research Institute also bring a Ukrainian point of view and Ukrainian scholarship forward to counter some of the Russocentric scholarship that is still very widespread, Sovietophile, Russophile, biased scholarship or whatever. And our job at our institute is to produce objective, calm, serious scholarship about Ukraine, its past, its present, its culture, its language, its history, its people. And that's what our institute is doing. So I was very happy to hear that President Poroshenko and his wife are considering supporting our work here at the institute, and look forward to discussing this matter further with him. Okay, we got several of them here. Can you comment on the current repression of Crimean Tatars, including the long prison sentences handed down to activists?
First of all, I want to thank a special respect to Crimean Tatar. I know exactly because Mustafa Jamal, the leader of Crimean Tatar, people are all 6 years were shoulder to shoulder with me. He is a member of my political fraction, together with Akhtem Cheygos, who spent 3 years in the Russian prison. Several times he was proposed, just give us Ukrainian passport and accept Russian and be free. Can you imagine how strong spirit of this person, that he hate an idea to buy the freedom by betraying just a passport. Today he is member of Ukrainian parliament. And definitely we work hard to take out from Russian prison Crimean Tatar, using the opportunity of the international community, European Parliament. Last Ilmi Umerov and Ahtem Cheygos was taken with the cooperation with the president of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. But the most important thing is that we go to the ICJ, International Court of Justice, to launch the case for Russian responsibility, because Russia signed the International Convention against racial discrimination. And we never have before this type of precedent, but now is a victory. First victory was the Hamburg Tribunal, which would put the International Court of Justice jurisdiction on the Russia aggression in the Kerch Strait. Russians think that this is, they have an opportunity to cross the red lines without any limits. We put the situation when Russia would be responsible for the aggression in the Kerch Strait, for illegal annexation of the Crimea and discrimination of the Crimean Tatar, for different other issues, including the case for financing terrorism. Last week, International Tribunal opened the decision that they accept their jurisdiction in case Ukraine against Russia. So we'll do definitely the most efforts to help Crimean Tatar, to protect the rights of the Crimean Tatar. People who refuse in taking Russian passport, who not recognize illegal annexation of the Crimea, it is easier not recognize it outside of the Crimea. But it is a real hero for those who not recognizing the Russian annexation living inside the Crimea. We do many things, starting from supporting the arts, films. Please, I highly recommend, if you allow me to be a little bit promote you, the two films, Kiborgi and Dodomo. The brilliant Crimean Tatar film producer Ahtem Seteblayev. Definitely see it. Or maybe we can organize maybe presentation here in Edmonton. And I ask Ahtem and the whole group to come here and to present this film in the near future. That would be a great idea. Thank you.
Two related questions. In the 2 weeks remaining before the Paris-Normandy 4 meeting, what do you recommend that the Canadian and worldwide diaspora do? And related to that, what are your expectations about the December 9th meeting in Paris?
Look, the Minsk agreement named peace plan of the President Poroshenko. In my lecture, I said in details what necessary to do. We insist that we have a roadmap of the implementation of Minsk. First, security component, then second, the political component. If we try to accept by cover of Steinmeier formula, which is not existent, Steinmeier have no relation with to the Steinmeier formula, or to take, for example, withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from Ukrainian lands, come on. This is our lands. Why we should withdraw our troops from our land, from our soil? Where you find out these type of things? So this is what we talk. We need peace, but not capitulation. In the 17th of September, year 1941, in Poland, stop shelling. But not because of the peace, but because Poland stopped existing. And I cannot allow this type of scenario for Ukraine, definitely. Thank you.
Is it possible for Ukraine and Russia to build a constructive relationship? Can it only come in a post-Putin world?
By the way, depending how you answer this question, it would be mentioned, do you understand what I said or not? I think that my answer would be in 2 words. Please not trust Putin. Too short?
No,
I think everybody understands.
Please comment on proposals for special status for Donbass.
You should understand what is the differences. First of all, there is no any special status for Donbass now. In the year 2014, we agreed that would be a special regime for local self-governance. This is not a special status. This is for local self-governance. But the key issue, it was proposed and accepted for 3 years. For 3 years, then everything come back to the normal legislation. And if now they will propose that it would be done for the permanent basis, this is definitely not meet to the interest of Ukraine. So please pay a special attention, not only for the essence, but also for the term for this special law.
Mr. President, in an interview after the election this year, you said police interference skewed the result. As the police come under the Interior Minister, why wasn't he replaced beforehand as a precaution? And why is it that the person, Arsen Avakov, still in his post in the new government, even though he was appointed temporarily in 2014? Is Mr. Avakov irreplaceable? Why? Asked by a political scientist, you can tell, eh?
You are well informed. The forming of the new government definitely is not responsibility for my team. And I think for every single minister, for every single governor, it was the personal responsibility of the President Zelensky. No your parliament, no prime minister, no anybody else. For example, he said, okay, we take some members of the parliament, which, okay, I do not criticize him. This definitely not meet the criteria of the members of parliament of Ukraine. And he said, okay, but they are representing people. No. None of the people knows this person. People vote because President Zelensky said, I guarantee, I know that these people representing you in the parliament under my responsibility, said Zelensky. So if it is Zelensky's responsibility, my recommendation to this political analysis, ask Mr. Zelensky.
It seems Macron and Merkel are getting ready to proclaim peace in our time. How does Ukraine and the free world avoid repeating Chamberlain's folly of appeasing aggression?
I will be absolutely open with you. The role of the Chancellor Merkel in saving Ukraine, saving our independence, saving our territorial integrity is enormous. Only she can speak this way to Putin. Without her and without our long 19 hours marathon without single minute of break, will push Putin to sign up Minsk agreement. And with that situation, I personally definitely trust Chancellor Merkel. And hate the idea when Ukraine tried to avoid global and European support and start to make tete-a-tete negotiation with Putin. Believe me, this is a trap. And please consider this is my recommendation to the Ukrainian team who go to the negotiation. Because, look, we have all 5 years or 4 years, very effective team. German, French. I want to thank, using this opportunity, the Ambassador Kurt Volker, who worked very hard and organized the coordination with the United States of America, all the process which happened in the Normandy format. And how it will be now, I simply don't know. But definitely, without the strong solidarity with the Ukraine and strong unity of the free world, we give all the cards to Putin. This is too risky, and we shouldn't do that. Thank you.
What do you regret the most about what you were not able to accomplish being president?
Look, if we start to mentioning the number of reforms we do during the last 5 years, you simply cannot believe that this is possible. In a short period of time, we make judicial reform, we make decentralization reform, giving the power to the local community. We make medical reform, healthcare reform, pension reform, educational reform, village medicine reform, telemedicine reform. We make, first of all, reform of the national security and defense sector. We make, Petrovich can add, what does it mean, decommunization of the country. Can you imagine that 6 years ago, statues of Lenin were in every Ukrainian village, and streets of Lenin was in every Ukrainian town, and many, many other things. And I'm proud what we do. Very tiny reform, or more important reform, but Ukraine simply, it is not exist in Ukraine before. I want to thank my wife, the First Lady Marina Poroshenko, for being responsible for the inclusive education. And even the fact, Marina, that's for you. Even the fact that for the 3 years, 20,000 children with special demands appeared in the normal atmosphere, was taken from the 4 walls and appeared as a symbol of the Europeization of Ukraine. And but you ask me what I'm missing. All these reforms are not irrevocable. And this is great danger. And this is the strongest motivation for me to stay in politics, to guard what we have done during the last 5 years, not to allow nobody to take Ukraine by hand, return back to the Russian Empire. And we should do together, definitely. Thank you.
We have time for 2 more questions. With NATO's cohesion as a military-political alliance in disarray, with American President Donald Trump failing to reinforce its importance and cozying up to Russian President Vladimir Putin, how do you believe Ukraine will find protection from Russia? And does future prosperity come from aligning itself with the West?
2 components. First, the guarantee of Ukrainian sovereignty, territorial integrity, and independence is not the Budapest Memorandum. The guarantee is armed forces of Ukraine. If your nation do not have strong army, your nation are in great danger. No exclusion. Second component, NATO membership. I'm proud that I was the president who proposed to the parliament, and parliament support this my presidential proposal of changes in the constitution, obligatory for every president, for every prime minister, for every members of parliament, for everybody to work hard for the membership, future membership of Ukraine in NATO. Believe me, not existing any other instrument if you have a neighbor like Russia. Maybe if Ukraine would be a neighbor of Canada, we can find out different scenario, but not now.
One last question, and this is from a student, Sofia Saluk. Чи буде магазин розчин в Едмонтоні?
Where is the student Saluk? Great idea. If you make a decision to work and to establish, I will help you.